Mr. Mayor, fellow council members, and the city manager and city attorney. Thank you also to all these people here that have come in tonight. I'd like to begin, first of all, by saying, the previous gentleman made a good point when he talks about an underlying problem, getting down to the root of it. And I agree with him. In my business in the lawn and landscape industry, I oftentimes run into clients who have a problem in their yard or their landscape, and they want me to fix it, or they want somebody to fix it. And oftentimes the typical fix is just to throw something on it and get rid of the problem, or so they think. But the real root of the problem is deeper down, because it keeps coming back. While you might take care of it at the time, it keeps coming back. So the previous gentleman was correct in that. We have an underlying problem, and until we get down to the root of that, we're going to keep having to deal with this. And I believe, honestly, that instead of creating a negative image for the kids, a negative penalty for these kids, that we might see much better results by trying another approach, a positive incentive, making them want to do this, making them want to attend school, rather than making them be afraid to skip school because, they might get in trouble for it. Let's make them want to go to school. Whether you're training a child, a dog, or any number of other things, when you're dealing with another being, be it human or otherwise, if you can get them to go along with you, to join up, you have much better results, and they're much more lasting. You get down to the root of the problem. But to continue on, I'd like to first of all recap a few things that I brought forth previously, just to kind of retouch on those. I'd like to touch on some issues that were brought up by previous people tonight, and then bring up a few new points. So first of all, to take a look at what I recap from 2 weeks ago. I believe, yes, that this daytime curfew ordinance, and actually the whole curfew ordinance, both daytime and nighttime, is actually bad for Bedford. Especially the daytime part of it, yes, that's mostly what we're talking about here. It's bad for the families, it's bad for the business, the economy, the tourism, it's bad for Bedford's image. For a number of reasons. Many of those reasons have already been eloquently brought forth, the fear that it creates, the harassment that it brings forth potentially, undue search and seizure possibly, and we're supposed to trust that all these things are okay, but, as I pointed out before, when the government, local, becomes oppressive to the businesses and to the people, to the residents or visitors, they will leave. And when they leave, we're left with nothing, which takes us into a downturn and something that we don't want. We ask, who has spoken in favor of this? Well, from what I've seen up to this point, most, if not everyone who has spoken in favor of this ordinance, save for the city council and the police chief, has been either a paid employee or in some manner, shape, or form associated with the school district. Who has spoken against? Well, numerous people have. It seems to me that more people have spoken against this ordinance than those who have spoken in favor of. We've heard from private school people, public school families, homeschool families, business owners, and even senior citizens. We've heard from residents of Bedford and people who do not reside in Bedford, but they travel to or travel through Bedford, they own businesses in Bedford, or they conduct business in Bedford. They go to some of these businesses. I've spoken with other business owners or managers in Bedford, and until I get their clearance, I'm not going to specify who they are. I'll let them come forth and speak if they want to, or if they give me the go-ahead, I'll go ahead and let you know who it is. But I've spoken with other business managers that don't like this because it does put an undue burden on them and their employees, and it affects their business. Next, I'd like to point out that this ordinance is duplicative and it's unnecessary. We already have the state laws, and this is burdensome. Also, it is poorly written in the sense that, as we pointed out before, it provides defenses rather than exemptions, therefore assuming guilt until you prove your innocence, which puts an undue burden on those that are being questioned. Additionally, something that has not been brought forth yet, and I would like to trust that this is just an oversight. I really don't believe, and I don't want to believe, that you guys or the school district or anybody intended to craft this ordinance this way. But if you read the language of the ordinance, it specifies that a minor is anyone under the age of 17. Therefore, this ordinance also applies to infants and toddlers, to non-school age children. Meaning that a mother can't take her baby out, her 6-month-old, during school hours? Like I said, I trust that this was just an oversight, but if you read the language, I believe that's exactly what it says. Again, another reason that I oppose this. It puzzles and concerns me also that, you know, for 3+ months now, I guess it's really been more along the lines of 5 months or more, that we've heard testimony time and time again against this ordinance, and now we've heard some for, but most of it has been against. Why you guys don't repeal this ordinance? I understand that you're trying to do good, and I would like to be able to help these kids, but as we pointed out before, it's a root problem, and just spraying some weed killer on the weed is not addressing the root problem. You know, there's also crimes that are committed during curfew hours by juveniles, and it doesn't prevent them. Now to cover some things that were brought up by the people who spoke previously from the school district and other people that spoke in favor of this ordinance. Assistant principal at Trinity, she gave an example of a student who was arrested last Thursday shoplifting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this ordinance was in effect. Why did it not stop this? I mean, she provided this example. I don't understand why, because obviously the ordinance didn't work. Some cases it does, some cases it doesn't. She then went on to say, it's not your duty, when she addressed you guys, the council members, it's not your duty to enforce this. It's mine. But yet they've put this duty off on you and you've embraced it. Again, something that she said. It's not your duty, council members. It's theirs. It's the school district's duty. And it's the parents' duty, not the city's. And something that incensed many of us, as was brought forth already when speaking to homeschoolers, life isn't fair. It was a very cocky and arrogant statement, very cold and calloused. And I, for one, and a number of other people did not appreciate it and obviously could not agree with that. It's not right. Life may not always be fair, but the government should not create things like this that are a harassment. The principal of Trinity stated there's a long process to follow the state laws that are already in existence. And this ordinance, these daytime curfew ordinances, allows them to kind of skirt around that and address the problem much quicker. Ladies and gentlemen, our country was founded on a system of checks and balances. Sometimes those long processes are there to prevent an abuse of power. That's why sometimes we need longer processes. Does the process need to be reviewed and maybe amended? Maybe, maybe not. But it sounds to me like this could be an attempt by the school district to circumvent a system of checks and balances, which is not good. We are to be free. It's granted to us in our founding documents that we are free from unreasonable search and seizure and from harassment. I fear that this ordinance could allow. Now, maybe the people that are in power now aren't going to do this, but it does open the door to opportunity for an abuse of power. And as I stated last time, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Therefore, we must be careful when granting these powers. Jurisdiction. I'd like to bring forth that word. What about jurisdiction? Where does the school district get their funds? From the taxpayers, from state and federal funds, which are from the taxpayers. The city gets their money the same way. You guys are voted in by the electors, by the citizens. You're to represent us, not the school district. And the citizens, it seems to me, have spoken quite clearly and voiced their opposition to this. So jurisdiction really goes back to the people, and the people said no. Crime prevention. The penalty for the other crimes that these kids are committing, or the crimes that these kids are committing, a lot of times the penalties for these other crimes that we're trying to prevent are greater than that provided by this ordinance. Now, if the greater penalty provided by those other offenses doesn't deter them, what makes us think that a lesser penalty